speech is about the Revolutionary War and why England lost the Revolutionary War. So, the three main reasons why England lost the Revolutionary War is logistics, their strategy, and the foreign intervention for the American side. So, the logistics of distance, supply shortages, and unfamiliar area of the American colonies complicated the war into not falling into Britain's favor. The strategy of Britain was at times weak because they underestimated American colonists' ability to fight for independence. They also did not integrate effectively the Loyalists into their war strategy, and British military leaders failed to keep up consistent strategy, which led to many errors during the war. The French, Spanish, and Dutch alliance with American forces strengthened the American force, which made them harder to overcome. Okay, introduction. Success for winning the American Revolution was not easy for the American colonists. Britain's military at the time were a superpower and very strong. Just how did these determined, motivated patriots win against the mighty British? In theory, the Redcoats should have easily fought the war and ended it in no time. But due to certain factors and circumstances, this was not so. The issues of logistics for the Redcoats. Even though Britain had a massive military force for by the war's end, they had accumulated about 100 regiments with 110,000 troops, and the Royal Navy contained 468 vessels. They act at the it was 110,000 troops. This did not include the Loyalists, which were the colonists that supported Britain instead of Americans. And then there was most of the Native Americans helped Britain. There was a few that helped American colonists, but most of them helped Britain. But the 110,000 troops, that just included Britain. That didn't include the other people that helped them. Anyway, there's quite a few issues with logistics. One of these issues was being so far from their homeland and fighting on unfamiliar terrain. It was 3,000 miles of ocean that separated Britain from her American colonies. One of these issues was they also had the issue of storing the warfare and supplies became tedious and cumbrous. In addition, their storage facilities and outposts were afflicted by partisan bands led by Francis Marion and Thomas Sumter and Andrew Pickens. A huge advantage for the Patriots was their commander-in-chief, George Washington, who advanced in his war strategies by learning from past errors. The American purpose for fighting was more meaningful than that of the British because they were fighting for freedom and protection of their home. They also were familiar with the terrain they were fighting on. The Americans' cause for fighting was also more popular in public opinion because they were fighting for independence against tyranny. This popular uprising led to foreign invention and aid. One of the countries that helped America against British were the French, and they were already enemies with Britain. So that was an incentive for them to help the Americans fight against the British. Some of Britain's war strategy attempts were unsuccessful. An example of this is when the summer of 1777, British General John Burgoyne moved south from Canada in hopes of meeting up with General Howe and his regiment, who was coming in from New York City. Unfortunately, General Henry Clinton's strive to do the same with his force of soldiers was unsuccessful, meaning they arrived too late and Burgoyne was forced to surrender his army at Saratoga on October 17, 1777. So that was a success for the American side. Britain's failed war strategies. Once the surrender of Saratoga and French intervention on the American side happened, so once they surrendered to America at Saratoga Army, that's around that same time, that's when the French came to help the Americans. So it was pretty bad for the British at that time. On the American side happened, Britain had to think of another war strategy. Britain was occupied a part of the southern colonies, secure defense with the Loyalists, secure started place in the southern colonies and then make its way up to Virginia and the northern colonies. Thus, the British forces moved from Philadelphia to New York, and then in 1778, they took over Savannah. In 1780, once they captured Charleston, they captured a Continental Army as well. But they overestimated themselves, and it was difficult to keep control over territory. At the Battle of Kings Mountain, 1780, a Loyalist regiment was defeated, and at the Battle of Cowpen, in that battle, it fell into the Patriots' favor. After these mishaps, the English General Cornwallis decided to move to North Carolina, where he planned to attack American General Nathaniel Greene's troops. However, after the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, the British were still no better off. He then moved into Virginia in hopes he would be able to coincide with British forces there and link up with General Clinton in New York to defend against the American forces. But instead, he was isolated in Yorktown and had to surrender to the American Army on October 19, 1781. And this is when he surrendered to George Washington there, and that's when America won the war. Let's see, foreign intervention for the Americans. America gained helpful alliances with France, Spain, and the Netherlands for their aid in defeating the British. France was especially helpful in their efforts to help the Continental Army fight against the British Crown. And one of the reasons why we won the war was because France, they really helped. I don't think if it wasn't for them, I don't know if we would have won, because they helped bulk up the army, because Britain had more people in the army than America did. And with that foreign intervention, we were able to build a bigger army to fight against the British. Signing the Treaty of Alliance and Commerce, that meaning France would send supplies to America to help them in their warfare. As well as have supplies, warfare sent to the American troops from France. Since the Continental Army was small, this foreign invention again helped build the army up in order to defeat Britain's massive army. And then I have my works cited. This is a works cited for all the pictures that I found. This is a works cited for not for the pictures, for the sources. I want to give credit for the first source to author Scotty Anthony Jr., where I got the information about the logistics, the problems of logistics for the English. And I also want to give credit to author Gail J. Paul, and that's where I got the information about the foreign intervention and the strategy, issues and strategy for the British. So anyway, that is my speech. Thank you all for coming.
All right, guys. So here, let me say something real fast. Thank you so much for doing that. And thanks for, and I'm gonna give everybody a 1.5 points extra for staying late today. I wanna say, just think about the Vietnam analogies here, about people being motivated, fighting on their own terrain, about foreigners being involved, about a civil war taking place within the populations of the